Hello everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have Richie Bavasso, founder and CEO of NQ Medical. He's a serial entrepreneur in the healthcare space and he's currently leading his fifth company. Welcome to the show, Richie.
Thank you, Gaines.
So can you tell us a little bit more about NQ Medical and your technology, Rich?
Sure. Primarily we think of ourselves as a machine learning company for healthcare. We develop digital biomarkers, not exclusively, but primarily in the neurodegenerative space. So any condition with a motor or cognition component, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson, etc. And the technology we use is based on your interaction with your personal device. So we have two mantras, if you will. Number one, no proprietary device. Everybody's device, whether it be laptop, phone, desktop, or tablet, is a medical device. And no proprietary app. And I'll talk a little more about that in a moment, why we do not use a proprietary app. This is a 100% passive data collection tool. The FDA has classified it as software as a medical device.
Okay, perfect. I think I've been hearing a lot about digital biomarkers and passive data collection. I wanted to just validate. So is it possible to uniquely identify a person just based on the typing?
Yes. Surprisingly, not surprisingly, every person has a unique typing signature, just like they have a unique fingerprint.
Oh, wow.
And this technology actually started 30 years ago in the security industry when passwords were being violated and they were using keystroke dynamics to identify the individual in place of a password. So it's been around for a while, not the NQ technology, but the thesis behind the technology. And as you know, now we have biometrics with devices, et cetera. So we've come a long way from being dependent on passwords. So if you think about that, every individual, presume we're normals, has a unique type of signature, it's not hard to imagine that someone with a disease has a different signature. So what we've been able to identify is the deltas between normal and these various diseases of motor and cognition. You know, it's a powerful tool because it can be used for a variety of different things. Primarily early detection. Because if you think about it, we use our devices, 8-10 hours a day? And we're generating a brain health score every 90 seconds. So you can imagine the amount of data we're producing in a day, in a week, in a month, that constantly revalidates your score, if you will. And some of the problem with neurodegenerative diseases is by the time someone finds their symptoms troublesome, they've already had the disease for 10 or 12 years. And the options for treatment begin to get limited at that point.
Okay. So here, when you say passive data collection and using all these digital devices, we talked about keystrokes. Are there other digital signals that you tap into as well?
Yeah, anything that's native on the device. So the GPS, the accelerometer, the accessibility services. Think of us, because this is a big issue we'll talk about in a moment in terms of privacy. We don't look at what you type. We don't know the words you're formulating, the website you're visiting, the apps you're using. We look at how. Things like hold time, flight time, pressure, frequency of backspace, location dynamics. You know, if you look at your keyboard, you see the P is very far away from the Z. Well, that dynamic is very different than if you look at your keyboard and see a G and an H, it's very close together. So there's many, many different features we look at in how you interact with your device. And the touchscreen gives us a little bit different data than the mechanical keyboard. So we combine those together into our algorithms.
Okay. So if someone is really searching for the keys, struggling and finding them and still typing, and you're saying there's still a unique fingerprint
to
every
because
person.
all we care about, it's a very good question. All we care about, because we measure in milliseconds, is that precise moment your brain and finger interact with the device. That 1/100,000th of a second. We don't care what language you speak. We don't care about the operating system that you're using. We don't care about your typing skill. It's really that nanosecond of time that you're touching the key or the screen. There's this condition called bradykinesia, and I'll just explain it for the audience. So your finger is on the L key, and your brain is sending a signal saying, please move your finger to the P key, and there's a delay. Okay? That's a condition, that's a subcomponent of Parkinson's, and we can pick that up. And that indicates, presence of disease. So yeah, little subtle nuances from how you interact with your devices.
And particularly when you get this in a longitudinal time frame for long and then hundreds or thousands of instances, that's when it gets really like high fidelity signals.
Absolutely. And as you know, because you understand data science, it's pattern recognition. If you gave me 1 million people and you said every single person in this group has hypertension, and I study them and I notice, what's different between these people and normals? is they have lower earlobes. I'm making this up. It's not actually true. Okay. So then you can train the model to say every time you see a person with lower than normal earlobes, you can identify that person as X. So it's really pattern recognition through longitudinal analysis. Yes.
Here, so how do you apply data analytics as part of your solution?
Well, it's really all about algorithm discovery. So we take a population, and let's say the most recent study we did was in ALS. So working with MGH, we identified a cohort of patients that were at various stages of ALS, and we began to align them with a control group and to see if there was different patterns of, I call it behavior, of usage of the devices. And we very quickly found that in the laboratory, in the clinic, we were able to identify that. So stage 2 is, okay, fine. Now let's take those same people we had in the clinic, let them go home and use their personal devices in the wild. And then we collect that data and we validate what we learned in the clinic. And then the third stage is we take a brand new group, our version group that's never been part of our study, and we deploy our tool in the wild again, and we further validate that the algorithm that we've discovered has merit.
Okay. And this is a patented technology, and you mentioned FDA has also approved this, right?
Well, we have breakthrough designation from the FDA for our Parkinson's product, filing our de novo application, because we filed once with a predicate. The FDA came back and said, no, you guys are brand new technology. There's nothing else like you. You have to file de novo. And we just finished our pivotal trial. So we're filing our de novo application this month. And the average approval time or clearance time is 200 days. So give or take 200 days from the end of January, we hope to have our FDA clearance as software as a medical device, kind of diagnostic aid for Parkinson's. And then we will immediately file with ourselves as our own predicate for ALS and Alzheimer's, because that's our next batch of data.
Okay. Yep. Sounds like a plan. So good luck with that. So what were the challenges that you had when there's a lot of data and you talked about different kinds of data and different types of diseases. What were one or two biggest challenges that you encountered?
Well, one of the interesting things we found in our clinical trial that we did not expect is the number of people, even people who you would think would have a device like between 45 and 65. I would say 10% of the population does not own a device. Another 10% owns a device with an out-of-date operating system. And another 10% has the modern device, has the up-to-date operating system, but they just don't use it. So those were, so that's 30% of a potential population that wouldn't validate for this advice. Okay, that's one thing. Another challenge is, just defining the clinical need. That's all well and good that we have all this technology, can do all these wonderful things, but unless it really supports the clinical decision-making process, improves outcomes, lowers costs, then it really has no value and people won't use it. So I would say that the hardest part of bringing this product to market is really outside the scope of machine learning and more about, what problem we're solving.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that kind of a narrative that it's the toughest challenges are not often with machine learning, but with either the problem you're solving or the data that you need to collect, or in terms of the user's behavior. Yeah.
You know what the other problem is? Actually, the biggest problem when it comes to algorithm development is the gold standards. They're very subjective. They've been around a long, long time. They're not great. In fact, most doctors will call them the bronze standard. And so the FDA requires us to be as good as or better than a kind of a deficient tool, if you will. So it's a big challenge. It's not just for my company, but for other companies like mine who are trying to bring their offering to the general public, to the medical community, and they're being held to a standard that's not that great. And what's interesting is the regulatory bodies and the clinicians are holding digital medicine products to a higher standard because we can be accurate, where they can't achieve that level of accuracy with the gold standard tools. So it's a kind of a catch-22.
Yeah, that's actually surprising. So you're saying the comparison is not with the standard today, but there's a higher requirement for these digital tools.
Well, it's both. They want to compare you to the gold standard because that's what the clinicians are used to seeing. So they want to know, well, if it's a X score on the UPDRS, well, I want it to be what is the equivalent score in the NQ? So we have to do that. But yeah, the level of accuracy with these other tools is just not there. It's not there. It's physician judgment, which, by the way, we never intend to replace the physician. We're an extra layer of data to help with the clinical decision process.
Do you see any challenges for patients or other medical professionals to?
Yeah, and this is going to sound very cynical. So I apologize, but I've been in the business for 30 years, so I can get away with saying it. It's about incentives, and it's not always money incentives. If you're a patient, this has to be very easy to use and provide real value. We don't want to be considered health entertainment, like just a Fitbit. You can count steps. Well, some people like that, but it has no real value in terms of determining, health and what decisions you should be making for your care. If you're a clinician, it has to be very easy to prescribe. Okay, it has to be inexpensive, and there needs to be a financial incentive for me to do one more thing. I am so busy as a clinician or nurse or a doctor. I haven't got time. If this can save me time and make me money, and I think COVID has done us all a big favor in my space because remote patient monitoring codes have been introduced and they will continue to grow. That helps. If you're a payer, you want cost savings, you want improved outcomes, you want member satisfaction. So we've done a lot of quantitative and qualitative research with these various stakeholders to try and find, where is the magic bullet, I guess, in terms of adoption. But until we get our FDA clearance and we get out there on day one, let's just presume, July 30th, we really won't know what the true incentives are for usage.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of behavioral change, and I think both aspects are really key. Yeah. Talking about when it comes to data and the passive data collection, I think you hinted about this earlier. So there are ethical privacy constraints, and what challenges do you see, and how do you think this can be addressed?
Yeah, this is the most commonly asked question every time I talk about NQ. And I'm going to answer it kind of half jokingly first. Privacy does not exist. Apple and Google know everything you're doing on your phone, multiples times anything I'll ever want to know. But the way we've solved the problem is we do not accept PHI. So the PHI for the patient resides in another environment. So there's a twofold process for us. The EMR of the institution or the doctor's office, or the EDC, if you're part of a clinical trial, belongs somewhere else. Okay. All we get is an ID number, and we send our data to the database with the ID number. The second thing is, we're almost naturally encrypted, because even if I gave you all the keystroke dynamic data, you wouldn't know what to do with it. You wouldn't do anything. And the third thing we do is, which I said there were two, actually three. When the patient enrolls in NQ, they decide where the data goes. So that they may say, I'm the only person that gets the data, or send my data to here, or send my data there. So at a minimum, we do not store it at all, locally or in the cloud. One of your questions, which I thought was fascinating, was, what do I see about the future? I know for a fact that these 4 scenarios I'm going to share with you, we can do them today. But there are issues why we don't. So number one, imagine you enter a grocery store. You grab your cart and you start shopping. And when you check out, somebody hands you a report on your health based on your gait of moving the shopping cart, based on your eyes scanning the shelves, based on what you pick up and touch. Okay. Scenario number 2, you get in your car, you start it up, your navigation system speaks to you, asks you a few questions, decides that from looking in your eyes, you're not fit to drive. This engine will not start. Or if you're surfing the web, like on Facebook, or ordering something in Amazon, constant assessment of your voice and everything else is going on. And even now, you know this, we have Nest in the home. You fall down, you yell out for help. There's multiple devices connected by IoT that can say, okay, Gaines has fallen down, EMS is on the way, but let me give you his blood pressure, let me give you his pulmonary scores, et cetera, et cetera. So when the EMS arrives, they've already got a full workup on you. We could do that all today. It's not the technology that's getting in the way, it's, behavior and privacy and et cetera.
Okay. I think all of these are great scenarios. Thanks, Rich. It has been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for sharing more about the space and your company.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.